All right, guys, we are live UFC 291 recap show on Sherdog.com. I am your host. My name is Keith Schillen. We are recapping UFC 291, which was for the BMF title. So, of course, when we talk about bad motherfuckers, Ben can't be here. He doesn't fit that bill. So, Ben's not here. I had to go to the baddest motherfucker in MMA media. I got the great Jason Hagholm. Jason, how you doing, man?
I'm doing quite well, Keith. I mean, it's a crazy day for combat sports as a whole with both MMA and boxing, but what a night of fights. I mean, really, this show brought it in all aspects, and I can't wait to break it down. This is just an eventful night from Salt Lake City.
Yeah, before that, shout out to all the guys in the chat talking it up. If you watch this show live and you're not in the chat, shame on you. It's a lot of fun. Everyone's really respectful, kind of the same crew every time, so a lot of familiar faces. Jason, do me a favor. Make sure you pay attention to the chat because at the end we pick a listener of the night. They all like to compete for that. So, obviously, I know, Jason, you probably have Bellator on somewhere. I got it in the background. I'm kind of trying to watch it, but not too much. I know there was a boxing match tonight. From my understanding, Terrence Crawford won. That was...
Yeah, he won handedly. He
Okay.
won. He dominated that fight. He knocked Errol Spence down 3 times in that fight, twice in the 7th round, and it was stopped in the 9th round mercifully.
Well, that's good because a lot of times I don't really watch boxing that often. Usually it's, like going head-to-head against UFC. But a guy I know, his uncle or cousin or some kind of relative is one of the trainers. I don't know if he's a head trainer or some trainer of Terrence Crawford. So I was rooting for him just for that reason alone. So I'm glad he won. I just have a question for you. Do you think Terrence Crawford could eat a Justin Gaethje high kick?
Ooh, I mean, I don't think any boxer can eat a high kick, hence why they don't transition over like that. Probably not, but I want to see Terrence Crawford. I just want to see him in boxing. I don't want to see him transition over. We got too much of that going on in this sport, and it can be watered down, and I want to keep the elite guys in their respective sports.
So the last time I had you on, I don't know if you remember this, it was downpouring raining where I am, and we had bad, like the Wi-Fi kept cutting in and out because of how bad. Dude, you won't believe it. It's absolute downpouring raining again. So hopefully the Wi-Fi holds up. But right now it seems pretty crystal clear to me. So hopefully we fix that problem. All right, let's get right into it. BMF title. We have all 11 fights to cover. Main event, Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje. The second fight, before we get into the actual action, let me ask you, what was your thoughts about BMF when they first announced it, bringing it back again for this one? Like, what's your thoughts on the BMF?
I could care less about the BMF personally. I know they wanted to just have some sort of title be handed out in the main event portion of this show, as UFC has this thing that you can't have pay-per-views without titles being presented in the main event. This fight to me sold itself. How great the first fight was in 2018. You knew the second fight was gonna, deliver in a different aspect or in some capacity of the same way. And when we're just about to talk about this fight, it was a much more cleaner and technical, and just how much those guys had improved since 2018. But yeah, I could care less about the BMF. I hope they never bring it back. They may, with some of the comments some of the guys made on this show, as we'll get into, but I don't care about the BMF. I think it's dumb, but UFC loves this gimmick, so I do expect maybe to see it down the line.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I want to shout out to everybody in the chat. Let me know. I have an AC going right here. I mean, it was like 90 degrees today. I couldn't hear. I could hear you, but it's kind of hard because I'm an old man, so I just turned the volume up. You sound normal to me, but in the chat, if he's blasting, let me know, and I'll turn it down, and I'll just strain. So please let me know, guys, because it sounds fine to me right now. Yeah, I feel the same way. So my thing about the BMF was, to me, it felt not about who's the baddest MFer or whatever this. It was more like, okay, which guy in the UFC is more likely to fight on the streets, willing to fight anybody on the streets. And like, yeah, that's cool, but that's not what I'm a fan of the sport. I'm a fan of the sport because I want to see the best athletes, the most talented guys. And yeah, I do have a little problem with the BMF because, to me, the baddest dude is usually the heavyweight champion. But that said, like, you can give me Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier any day of the week. I mean, two of the greatest fighters. We were talking about it, me and Ben Duffy. We were talking about it on the previous show. Probably two of the greatest fighters who never won the actual. I know they both were interim champions, but the actual championship. I had when I watched this fight, I had the exact emotion I expected. Well, no, actually, let me back that up. What I was hoping for was an all-time war, and we were on our way after the first round. It wasn't a rock'em sock'em like we've seen. I think both guys have polished up their game so much. It was a technical kickboxing battle, but because of their styles, they were still landing huge shots. But if someone told me a knockout was going to happen, this is the exact feeling I have. I was and you guys can see on the ticker, Justin Gaethje won, second round knockout, high kick, absolute beautiful thing. My reaction was like, one side of me was just like, oh, that's amazing, Justin Gaethje, that's fantastic. Probably another bonus for him, keep the bonus streak going. Biggest win of his career, main event, how fantastic. And then the other side of me saying, oh my God, Dustin Poirier, like the best dude in the world, just got knocked out right in front of his wife. I feel so bad. You know, a guy that likely will never win a UFC title gets pushed back even further down the line. That's how I was going. That's kind of how I felt. What was your feeling when you saw Justin Gaethje win by knockout?
I think you saw this fight, you thought someone was going to win by knockout, but I don't think anyone thought a head kick knockout would happen. And it's crazy that 2 pay-per-views in a row in 2 years in Salt Lake City, the main events end via head kick, almost basically the same way, just orthodox versus southpaw. But I was not surprised by the knockout. I was surprised by the head kick and just how quickly that happened. It happened out of nowhere. It was like literally the boxing ended and you just look up and bam, there's the head kick and this fight is over. So, I mean, it's great for Justin Gaethje, really solidifies himself back now. As he was saying, he even said, I want to fight for the lightweight title. He's probably going to be the next guy in line after October to fight for the lightweight title. And then to your point now about like Dustin Poirier, it seems like he doesn't have much to give anymore. He's going to go down as a Hall of Famer. He's probably never going to get his chance back to fight for the lightweight title. Like, I don't even know if we see him fight again. If so, it has to be something worth his time or a big payday.
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, he's a guy. He talked about how much he loves fighting, so he might, who will be the guy? I don't know. Some things I want you said a lot of things I really want to touch on. I think the booth not the booth, but the guys in the truck to pull up the 2 head kicks right next to each other. Obviously, same city. That was fantastic. That said, like I love how the booth, DC and Joe Rogan made it seem like it was like the most spectacular technique we've ever seen. Go to any MMA gym, everyone's throwing a basic 1-2 high kick. That's all it is. It's just, just he wrapped it around the lead hand of Dustin Poirier, which is fantastic. Obviously, a lot of it's just timing, landed it perfect. You talked about nobody expected a high kick. Yeah, I agree, because so we did the preview show, and one thing I kind of was been my theme about Justin Gaethje is how many. We always talk about, he's such a different fight. Obviously, he still has that craziness, but it's like a controlled chaos. It's not just your car wreck now. Now it's like, it's the dummy that's strapped in the car with the scientist watching, how it crashes. So it's still like super entertaining, but it's more in a controlled environment. I feel like that's such a lazy breakdown of it because he has added so many skills. I talked about the overhand right that he added to the James Vick fight, the crazy kicks, the calf kicks against Edson Barboza. We saw dirty boxing go with Donald Cerrone. And now I'm looking at high kick Justin Gaethje. Like that's like another tool that now next time he fights, you got to watch out for. So besides his style of fighting, he's just so much more of a, and then another thing, how good was his counter striking? Slipping and ripping. That's another thing we don't really see of Justin Gaethje. To me, I thought he was absolutely fantastic. His skills. Let me ask you, first round, who did you score for?
Razor thin for Poirier. Just razor. Like, that's a pick'em round. Like, if someone said Gaethje won the round, like, okay. Like, I can see that. Like, that was such a close round. Nolan King put that tweet out saying like how close, asking people how to score it, and I actually did go for Gaethje, but it was like the same as reaction. I gave to Gaethje because it was like
the more volume of his, but Poirier had the biggest moment where he hit him. I'm sure Gaethje's eye will probably be swollen tomorrow. He was like blinking his eye out. He was rubbing it. We never really see Gaethje really react to something like a shot like that. That he was visibly shown that he was hurt. So I understand how anybody could give it to Poirier and maybe so. Let me ask you a question, and there's not too much to break down skill wise because I mean this is what we expected. These guys, there was no wrinkles, not a lot of story because there isn't a title on the line. I mean, not a real title, but
right.
What I'll say is this though: did the UFC blow it by booking Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev instead of waiting to see how this fight ended?
I like 100% they did. I mean, there is the story with, Justin Gaethje and Khabib, and now the champion is Khabib's protege in Islam Makhachev. And they have this thing now, the UFC, where, 10 years ago, they'd kind of wait and see how these things play out. Now they just want to rush and book guys in their spot, which, I mean, it's probably greater for the fighters because they have situations like that. They know when they can prepare for camp, but it just feels like they kind of rushed right to the Oliveira fight where you had this fight lined up. You knew the winner's probably in the hunt or right on the doorstep, and depending how the fight went, and didn't look like Gaethje took too much damage in this fight. Like if the opportunity was for him to go to Abu Dhabi in October, he would get there and take that fight. So yeah, they've just been rushing certain things. They've killed prospects ahead of time where it looked like they were set up, like especially in the featherweight division, like Arnold Allen comes to mind, and they've just kind of killed potential big fights like this. I mean, Oliveira and Makhachev too, that'll do fine, especially in Abu Dhabi with Makhachev being there and the history with the fight happening there. But I think everyone kind of wants to see what the improved Justin Gaethje can do up against Khabib's protege and Makhachev.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I said it when they booked it last time. I'm like, wow, I'm really surprised being that the bigger fight, the BMF headlining a pay-per-view is in the weight class. I think some of it is the behind the scenes things that we don't think about. They book an arena, Abu Dhabi, they're booking that pay-per-view. They probably have to give, that area. If they want to start selling tickets, they got to give, a main event. So not having a main event, probably not the best for ticket sales, especially because you're also going to a market that you're going to a lot. So it's not like, you showed up in Omaha, Nebraska, you haven't been in 5 years, and they're just going to buy tickets no matter what. They're just excited UFC's there. Like you're going to Abu Dhabi once a year, so they've been there. They were here. They were last year. They're getting the big pay-per-view, so it's not like, it's a pay-per-view, so I can guarantee. Like, well, we went to pay-per-view last year, so I think some of that has to do with it. Just now, I've seen Charles, and I'm not saying obviously Charles Oliveira is as good as it comes. He's got to win over Justin Gaethje. He's got to win over Dustin Poirier. So like accolades wise, you can make the argument for Charles Oliveira, but entertainment wise, selling a fight, to me, you're selling a fight. Best pound. You argue Islam Makhachev, best pound fighter, just beat Alex Volkanovski. Whether you give him that title, but I'm saying if you're the UFC, you market that best pound fighter versus the baddest motherfucker. Gaethje, how much he's improved since last time he fought for the title. Makhachev, the best guy in the world. To me, it just sells itself. I think Charles Oliveira obviously is fantastic, but to the American market, he doesn't speak English. He isn't. I mean, obviously he's a huge name, but he isn't the name that Justin Gaethje is. The most exciting. Like I don't know anybody on planet Earth who doesn't like Justin Gaethje. So to me, I really think the UFC blew it, and it's a fight I want to see more.
I think as well too. You have to remember that Abu Dhabi show that's going on in the afternoon on a Saturday when there's college football. There's a lot of other major sports in North America going head to head with that, and I think the name of Justin Gaethje on there, that gets a little bit more eyeballs off, the college football that's going on, whether you're a diehard of whatever team may be going on, Justin Gaethje's action. He is all violence. He is Mr. Excitement. He hasn't had a bad fight in his entire MMA career. So I could kind of see, why they should do that, but they've already now locked themselves in here. Oliveira, Makhachev too. And then granted, I think Oliveira, he's a guy deserving of a title shot as much as Justin Gaethje is. He looked like a superstar when he fought Beneil Dariush in Canada back in Vancouver a couple months ago. But pay-per-view wise selling, it doesn't have that much of a ring. Like when Poirier fought Khabib, like that felt like such a big fight, even though it was going on in the afternoon. But there were two of the best guys at 155 pounds, arguably 1 and 2 going against each other. And then you solidified who one was. This would feel the same way if Gaethje was in there, but he's not. But then again, we'll see what happens here. Where Gaethje's definitely going to get that shot. It's just not going to be in October.
Ben Cooley asked who these start times for. It's just for the crowd, probably. The crowd there, they spent a lot of money to get the UFC there. They probably don't want it at a ridiculous time for them. I'm sure that's something that has to do with it. Yeah, I think you made a really good point about the 1 o'clock. The other concerns I have is MMA is weird, where weird things happen.
Right.
And God forbid, you're already putting Justin Gaethje on the shelf. Because if you think about it, they fight in October. What's the earliest turnaround? No injuries. January? February, maybe? Mm-hmm. So you're putting Justin Gaethje on the shelf 8 months, 7-8 months now already. Then what happens? What happens? A clash of heads and there's a cut and the fight becomes a no contest. But one of Makhachev's got a cut that has to be healed, so it's going to take how much of that, and then you're pushing his fight back till the rematch till February, and then they don't fight Gaethje until July. Now you got Gaethje on the shelf for a year. Like those things happen. Oh, what if Oliveira wins? Now they're 1-1 against each other. You can make an argument for Makhachev to get the automatic rematch. Just things like that happen. That's my whole point. Which I think the UFC should have waited. Again, I understand that some things are out of their control. Is there much? I mean, this is probably the shortest that we'll ever talk about the main event because we kind of know the answers. Fight for the title next. The fight went kind of quick. Is Justin Gaethje who's a better stylistic matchup for Justin Gaethje? The guy Charles Oliveira already beat him, or Islam Makhachev? If you're Justin Gaethje, if you're his camp, who do you want to win?
Well, I think with Makhachev fighting Volk and how much he got hit, there's a blueprint that you can kind of follow, and just this improved Justin Gaethje where he's not as reckless, he's not as wild. He's a little bit more technical, a controlled brawler, if you will. I think that's maybe the matchup. But, I mean, fighters always have egos, right? And they always want to find a way to get some revenge. So, if Oliveira is to win, I think Gaethje would be willing to take that fight. I think Gaethje just wants the opportunity to fight for the belt and have that UFC lightweight title around his waist and become champion. But as of right now, at this very moment, I think as great as Makhachev has been, there is a blueprint there that I think Trevor Whitman and their camp can get together and put to a game plan for what Gaethje would need to do if he were able to fight Islam Makhachev.
Yeah, I think the Justin Gaethje that we saw tonight could hang with anybody. He'd be a threat to anybody. I would still probably lead, even though Charles Oliveira beat him, he almost knocked out Charles Oliveira. He had him hurt. I still would. I see more wrinkles in Charles Oliveira's game. He's obviously more hittable. He's been hurt more. So I would probably lean that way. And I expect if Makhachev wins, especially if he wins in spectacular fashion against Charles Oliveira like he did the first time, I expect him to be probably a pretty big favorite against Gaethje. But I wouldn't be confident making a pick. If this Justin Gaethje shows up with the calf kicks, with the variety of striking, a guy that he showed a little bit of wrestling, and then I still think his wrestling is extremely overrated, but he showed a little bit of wrestling, 2 fights ago. He's such a better fighter, and it's so funny because if you told me Justin Gaethje 3 years ago would be the type of fighter he is now, I would have laughed at you. Not to control that, but just the amount of damage he took over the years, I would have thought this guy's going to be super fun, but it's not going to last long. He's a fall off the cliff, and instead he's looked better than ever, and he's really a guy. Nothing against Dustin Poirier. Islam Makhachev. Nothing against Charles Oliveira. He's just one of these guys, kind of the same way I felt when Glover Teixeira was fighting for the title. Just one of these guys. I just want these guys to get a title. They just deserve it. They've been so close. Let's talk about another guy who's been so close, Dustin Poirier. Obviously, huge setback for him. You mentioned we might never see him again. I actually agree with that because. And it didn't, obviously we're just guessing. some of the things he said, he only wants big fights. He talked about he's set for he's set. He doesn't need to fight. He only fights for the love of it. It's never easy on the family. He's got a young child now, watching dad get knocked out, watching husband get knocked out. He seems like he'd be a great training partner, coach. American Top Team, they always need coaches because they have so many fighters. I could see him, but that he's a fighter. When he's saying I'm made for these moments, I can see him just, okay, dust myself off and I'll take on a contender in a co-main event of a pay-per-view, third from the top of a pay-per-view, some loaded card. What if and obviously I know this is not inside information, just gut call, does he fight again or not?
It's so hard to say. I mean, right now it seems like no, but there's also a show next weekend where Nate Diaz is fighting. I know it's boxing, but he's openly said, I want to come back to the UFC.
Shame on you, brother.
It seems like he wants to come back to the UFC. That fight we were supposed to get, maybe we get that.
I don't. So I know we don't know each other very well, but one thing about me is I don't care about all that other stuff. I don't care about the celebrity boxing shit. I hate bare knuckle boxing. I won't watch it. I don't want to watch has-beens box each other. But so Nate said he wants to return to the UFC.
Nate has openly said, I will probably go back to the UFC after this. So that makes it a little bit interesting for if Dustin Poirier wants to fight again. Because remember, they were supposed to fight a couple of years ago, and then the fight just never happened.
Yeah.
That's a fight that would intrigue me. And, once again, both guys are going to get paid the most money. The UFC is probably willing to pay people to have fights, especially bringing Nate back where he's already tested out the free agency and he's getting a stupendous amount of money to fight Jake Paul next weekend. So that's one fight. But when I look at the landscape at 155, it's like he's fought those guys. He's beat them. He's either lost to them. Does he need to fight Michael Chandler again? We kind of saw what he did against Conor McGregor. It's like Nate Diaz is the only one, but that's if he comes back to the UFC.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because if Nate fights Jake Paul and everything goes well and win or lose, it doesn't. We've talked about this before. There's some people that it doesn't matter if they win or lose anymore. Conor McGregor's and Nate Diaz's. They don't matter if they lose in outside, inside, inside the octagon, outside the octagon. He'll get that huge payday. Maybe, especially if he loses, it feels like it almost push him back towards MMA. All right. Smaller than Jake Paul, you got your big payday, but you're back in the UFC. Dustin Poirier would absolutely, and I never make predictions on this show without tape study. It's just kind of like a rule because people will hold that against you, and then 6 months later when the fight gets booked, you change your mind and they're like, "Oh, what are you talking about? You took this guy last time." But this one, I'm confident saying Dustin Poirier would absolutely murder Nate Diaz. That said, it's and I know some people like the purist in here. It seems like Mimi is not liking the Diaz talk, but it just makes so much sense.
It's a fight that got away from the UFC, and they don't like those things. They love to have finalities of stuff they tried to put together. Things fall through. That happens in MMA, but that's such a big one.
So he or she, I apologize, just asked, why would UFC even want Diaz? Because he's one of the biggest stars in the history of the sport. That's why.
He sells pay-per-views. That's all they're about right now.
There's a reason why Jake Paul wants Nate Diaz. If we were ranking the biggest stars in UFC history, he's in the top 10. He might be in the top 5.
I think top 5.
I mean, the only guys that are no-brainers bigger than him, Conor McGregor,
Brock Lesnar,
and Ronda Rousey. And then there might be one or two I'm not thinking of. So don't at me with somebody. But you get my point. Like he's in that next tier. If we do, you ever see those, on the internet tiers of sports athletes. He's on the next tier down. He's right there. So that makes sense. So the way we do it here, the way we do matchmaking is we're the emperor of the world. No one can say no. So because when we do that, I don't ask people predict. Oh, what a matchmake. Who do you think they should fight next? It's who do you think the UFC will match them against? No, we don't do it that way. We do. We're in charge. We're the king. We say you fight him, and nobody can say no. If they can bring back Nate, that makes a lot of sense. co-main event of like a major pay-per-view. Sure. A fight that would make sense is like a Armin Sarukian.
But what does that do for Dustin, right?
That's what I'm saying. After I just said that big speech, what does it do for Dustin? It does nothing. Like it's a threat, a huge threat, without the like. It's all risk, no reward because he wins. It's like it's kind of how Gaethje beating Fiziev felt, where that was a huge win. Stylistically, it was even tougher than the Poirier fight tonight, but doesn't do as much for his career than knocking out Dustin Poirier did tonight.
Yeah, exactly. If Fiziev, finishes or beats Justin Gaethje, that launches him into the top of that lightweight division. Same thing here for Sarukian. If he beats Dustin Poirier, it's great. But does Poirier even take the fight? He seems like he's not going to just come down to fight. No offense to Sarukian, great fighter and all, but he's kind of at a tier now, especially over the last couple of years, where he's going to fight, the bigger, more exciting name. Not that Sarukian isn't, but it just doesn't seem like a fight that would make sense for Dustin to take, especially after a loss like this tonight.
Yeah, I agree, and that's a really tough matchup for him. So yeah, I agree. Michael, I love you, brother, but you're smoking crack tonight, man. Nate is never a star. Nate is unless you're talking about from a talent sense. If you're talking about from a talent, like is he never the best fighter? Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. But personality and his draw power, like
he's a part of two of the biggest selling pay-per-views of all time in UFC history.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's if there's two reasons why Diaz could come back would be perfect. First, you book him against Dustin, and then you book him against Conor back to back. You get the trilogy fight with Conor.
There's two fights there, and Nate can go into the sunset. And UFC can be the 2-fight deal. I know UFC's not into that, but 2-fight deal. But they're 2 fights that you get the hardcores, you get the casuals, which you're all for, in on it, and those are exciting fights too.
Yeah, and then you sign him to a 3-fight contract, and because we're the Emperors of the World, you have him fight his brother Nate his last fight.
We go full World Series of fight here, just ruin the family dynamic.
Looks like Patricky Pitbull just won. I didn't see how he's up on the cage celebrating. So I know. Sorry, I should have said spoilers out there. Someone's not watching. I apologize, but I did say that we were going to talk about it. So all right, let's move on. Earlier you slipped up and you said light heavyweight when you meant lightweight. I think I did the same thing, which is the perfect transition as we had Alex Pereira, the former middleweight champion, moving up to light heavyweight, taking on Jan Blachowicz, the former light heavyweight. See, and I just mixed it up the other way. Champion winning, Alex Pereira winning by split decision. Out of the 11 fights on the card, who would have guessed that probably the most boring fight of the night was this fight? The two sluggers. It was the most boring fight. First of all, I'll put you on the spot because I saw some people. The consensus seemed like was going Pereira, but I saw some people arguing that Jan should have won. How did you score the fight?
I had it 29-28 Pereira. I just thought Pereira did a good job with the leg kicks and landed the better strikes. And once Blachowicz got tired, that was kind of the beginning of the end for him. He had some moments late in the third round where I guess that's where some of those people are coming from. But I didn't think it was enough for him to win the fight. But like as you said, like a fight where it just looked like someone's going to get knocked out or submitted. This one didn't go that way, but Pereira, I thought he did enough to win.
All right, so before I respond to you, I gotta give apologies to Michael. I said he was on crack. The chat is going. Sometimes I miss things in the chat. That was a second part of his answer. He was saying if he never fought Conor, then he would never become a star. Yes, that's true. So you aren't on crack. So
he wouldn't have been a superstar. He's still been a star, but he would have been in that MMA bubble.
Yeah,
now he's a superstar once he fought Conor, and he's now crossed over the threshold.
Yeah, he shows up to a, California. I show my age. I said the California Angels, the Anaheim Angels game. He's getting recognized. He's, so he went from an MMA star to an absolute mega
sporting star. Yeah, star.
Where people people that that watches 3 fights a year, they still ask you about Nate Diaz. So, I agree. I do think Alex Pereira won. Jan Blachowicz, it came down to just he really gassed himself out wrestling. I think some of that was just due to, kickboxer, wrestling a lot, but I think it more had to do with the altitude being in Salt Lake City. We were, that was one of the things me and Ben talked about, the Salt Lake City, how that would affect being the altitude. It didn't seem to really have an effect on many of the fights, but it did on Jan Blachowicz. And I want to say, obviously, you have to battle the elements, the weight cutting, the environment. If you're fighting a guy in their home country, like that all comes down in the game. So that's poor planning on you. And I'm not, and I want to be very, very clear. I'm not saying if they fought at sea level, Jan Blachowicz would have won, but I like his chances a little bit better. I didn't expect that. When I first was watching that first round, I was thinking to myself the opposite. When I saw him wrestling, I go, one, it's brilliant to wrestle him because that's your best avenue of victory. But I was thinking it was going to tire Pereira out because at one point, if you remember, Pereira is carrying a lot of Jan Blachowicz's weight. That's a kickbox. Again, I remember I always go back to the GSP BJ Penn fight where he wrestled right away and he said, "Oh, why'd you wrestle?" Well, I wanted to get all the lactic acid in his arms to lower his punching power. So I actually thought it was going to be the opposite effect. I thought Pereira was going to be the one to slow down. He did slow down. He just was more controlled. His body language looked a lot better. Jan Blachowicz looked terrible. That said, Pereira, if he put the gas on, I think he could have had a knockout. In the third round, he was, Blachowicz was extremely tired, and Pereira is like very slow, methodical, like one strike at a time in the third round. Kept that round close enough that a late takedown some people thought that won him the round.
Right. And that's a big part of where it's coming from. But there was no damage done. He just laid on him because he was exhausted. Did all the energy he had left, he just went and got that takedown. But yeah, if this fight was, there was all that talk, maybe this will be for the light heavyweight title and that Jamal Hill had to vacate it. And this had to go the extra 2 rounds. Jan could have been finished, or it could have just been an ugly fight for the remainder of the way. They were both looking a little sluggish there. But yeah, the elements, as you said, Keith, were not that big of a factor on this card. There was a couple fights maybe on the undercard, but this one for sure, you could see, the elevation really affecting Jan. And you just kind of feel bad for Jan, where this was a guy who was light heavyweight champion, the first guy in the UFC to beat Israel Adesanya when he came up to light heavyweight. And now you're coming off a performance like that where you did well, but you didn't do enough to win the fight in terms of the judges' scorecards. You fought in January against Ankalaev. That's a draw. It just pushes him that much farther back of getting a chance at the light heavyweight title, where now Pereira wins, got a good big win against a former champion in this weight class that he plans on staying in. I think that's good. If he went back down, I don't know how good that would be on the body. But I like Pereira here as well. It's an exciting striker that can put finishes away, and we get to see what he can do against these bigger guys that have potential, just laying that perfect shot against him.
Yeah, I originally wrote in my notes that I thought both guys looked poor, but then I as you're talking, I'm thinking about some things. One, you got a 35-year-old and a 40-year-old fighting each other. They're in high elevation. They're 2 kickboxers having a wrestling match. So I'm gonna pump the brakes a little bit. I still don't think it was a great showing from Pereira, even in a win. And I still just want to categorize. He won over a former champion, so it's like. It was obviously a great win.
It's your first fight in a new weight class, and you're fighting a guy that was the champion. It's not like you're starting in MMA like he was. He started at 185, slowly went through a couple fights at 185, then the title fight. This is right. You're just throwing right in the deep water at 205.
Yeah, and the scorecards on MMA decisions was 17 people picked Pereira, 2 people picked Blachowicz, 1 went with a draw. So the consensus there, and obviously I'm not talking about all of Twitter and everything, but the consensus, the usually how me and Ben look at it. Regardless of how I feel, I still think, and I knew this when he went against Izzy Adesanya, and Izzy Adesanya was getting takedowns, but I feel it again. Pereira has this huge flaw, and it's takedown defense and ability to get back up what he's taken down. That I see him against, say, I'm thinking about the top guys in the division, Magomed Ankalaev. I'm probably leaning towards Ankalaev for wrestling. I'm leaning toward. Luckily for him, the top 2 guys in the division, Jamal Hill and Yuri Prohaska. One, they're both out, which doesn't help. I actually think that helps. Blachowicz, you talk about him going back in line, but luckily two of the people that would be ahead of him are kind of sidelined right now, so kind of a little default there. But luckily for Bahia, the two top guys in the division are also guys who really aren't known for their power wrestling. But I'm trying to stay away. I'm trying to stay away from Ankalaev as much as I can if I'm him.
Ankalaev, Rakic. I mean, the division is so interesting right now. But yeah, he definitely needs to. He needs to work on some things. I mean, he's got Glover Teixeira there, where that's, you know, a guy that more known for his striking than anything. And he's so loyal to him, but they got to bring someone in for the wrestling. Like we saw Kevin Holland. That was a guy that great striker, can submit you, but his defect was his wrestling. He couldn't stop a takedown. Now he's brought in a wrestling coach, and he looked like the best Kevin Holland ever. I know we'll get more into that fight later on, but yeah, there has to be some more room for improvement. Obviously, he's excited to come out with a win. Plans to stay at this division, but there's obviously some room to improve in a division where there's so much intrigue right now, and a win here is so good for him, where he's at the front of the line for a title shot, where we don't even know who's going to fight for the vacant title when that happens too.
Yeah, I am. Even if you bring someone, I am a little concerned about his wrestling. Regardless, is his age that. Learning, old dog, learning a new trick. He's 35. And obviously his wrestling is much better than he was when he first showed up on scene. But 35, and also like I coach wrestling, and I'm not coaching UFC champions. So, but there's some kids, I coach high school kids and stuff. You could show a move to a kid and they get it instantly. And there's some kids you show a move a million times, they just don't get it. It's just how it is. I'm sure it's the same way. I don't know what your favorite sport is, baseball, football. So there's just some people could know how to pitch, and some people don't. Like just or some people can hit a fastball, some people can't, regardless of how often they try. So I am a little worried about that. But yeah, based on his name value, I'm putting him in a title shot next. With this is obviously we know Jamal Hill's out for it looks like at least a year.
Yeah.
Yuri Prohaska, he may be coming back sooner. If Yuri Prohaska's back, he deserves a title shot. He vacated the title. He's one side of it. But the problem is we have to find two people right now. So to me, who we looking at? We're looking at Magomed Ankalaev, Johnny Walker, Alex Bahia. Is there somebody else I'm not thinking of that really kind of in that mix?
Rakic is the only other one I can think of.
But he's been injured. He lost his last fight.
But that's the thing. This division right now is just a lot of guys that are hurt, and the elite guys, we don't know when they're going to be back. I mean, Paul Craig had a nice win, but I mean, that's way too soon.
That was at middleweight.
Yeah, that was at middleweight, right? Yeah. So,
well, if you listen to Michael Bisping and Chael Sonnen, John Jones might be back down at light heavyweight after Tom Aspinall showing. But to me, Bahia has to be one side of it. It's like who you putting him with. Johnny Walker would be fun as hell because they're both huge, crazy strikers. Magomed Ankalaev, to me, he probably should have won the title his last time. So I'm putting Bahia versus Ankalaev. Even though I just said if I'm, Glover Teixeira and I'm managing Alex Bahia, I'm trying to keep him away from Ankalaev. Going back to dictator of the world, that's the matchup I'm doing.
I don't hate it, especially when Jan post-fight after the Ankalaev fights, like, I thought Ankalaev won. So it's like, that's a big benefactor for him as well. Maybe this was the best case scenario as well for Ankalaev, because we know, as we said, Jamal Hill, the champion, vacates the title out at least a year. Yuri's up in the air. If it's sooner rather than later, he's probably going to for sure get a chance to win his belt back. But if they had to make a fight like today, that's probably the fight they make.
Yeah, I think best case scenario for the UFC would be if Yuri came back, and I, obviously, when you're going to book that fight, it'd probably be 3 months out from now or 4 months out from now. So you're looking maybe February, that far out. So it might work out for Yuri. Being timing could work out for him. It could not. I don't know. And I know that's probably what's going to happen here. Booking the right guy. Do you remember when there was a rumor and there was a thing when the UFC sent out to bars, the bars that order the pay-per-view, you go to Buffalo Wild Wings, something like this, and it said for a light heavyweight title?
Yes, for this fight, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. Could you imagine if we had 2 more rounds tonight?
Well, like I said, it was either in the 4th round, Jan's probably going to either get finished or it's going to be a sluggish, slow, like a heavyweight fight crawl at 205 to the end. It would not have been that exciting. So thankfully, they wisely were like, these guys have trained for 3 rounds. There's the elevation. We're not going to give them the extra 2 rounds. And it was just a straight on regular 3 5-minute round fight.
God, that would have been terrible. I mean, in fairness, you fight differently in 5-round fights. Maybe, Blachowicz has come out wrestling is, but like, who knows? You have to fight differently for 5 rounds and 3 rounds. So you pace yourself differently. So I know it's not fair. Like, I hate when people say, when you watch a 3-round fight and they go, well, if that was 5 rounds, the guy who wins the 3rd round, if that was 5 rounds, that guy was going to win. And it's like, well, it wasn't. So the guy, it's like, if we have a 100-yard dash and I beat you, but you were coming up on me at the end and you go, that was 200-yard dash or a 400-yard dash, I would have beat you. Well, maybe, but I also would have ran differently. I might have sprinted, out the gate or something like that. So
it was also a 100-yard dash. So I had to prepare for that instead of, what it could have been. It was that, and I would have lost that, right? So man. I see what you're saying.
Maybe saying, it's funny because I don't hear Keith talking like this when Izzy did it. When Izzy moved up, I don't know what he's talking about. Izzy moved up and lost to Blachowicz. Is that I know that that's I. Is he talking about fighting? I think I know he's talking. He's maybe put in the chat because maybe it could be a boy or a girl. Just let me know if you're a male or female, just so I can call you by the right gender. He's talking about? I think he's talking about like being a little more gun shy. When I said he was throwing single strikes, and he just got knocked the throws. That's a good point. I'll give you that. That's a very, very good point. So yeah. It's a girl. Okay, sorry. So I don't want to keep calling you a guy. So Mimi's a girl. So okay. Mimi. That's a very good point. So So I give you that. Like not being as aggressive in the 3rd round because he was just knocked out. Plus, Jan Blachowicz is a big power puncher. Plus, he has that legendary Polish power left hook. Yeah, I think that's a good point. So I'll give you a due on that one. So we talked about. So I'm sorry, Pereira versus who? Like you're booking him against who? Like your supreme being. Well, let's do this because it's unfair. Let's put Hill and Yuri out. Let's say that they're not ready.
Then it's Ankalaev. Then it has to be Ankalaev. Because if it's not Yuri, because he to me deserves it, but if he's not ready, has to be Ankalaev. So and Ankalaev looks like a big winner here tonight, where the guy he had a draw with lost tonight, so he kind of would put him in that spot. And as I said before, in the post fight back in January, Jan was like, "I thought Ankalaev won," so that maybe puts him back in there.
See, I could think you could make an argument the opposite.
You can
for
sure.
Isn't the winner because Jan lost. That like now there's somebody. 2 things: one, Pereira is in the mix now that he wouldn't be if Jan beat him. But 2, Pereira, say Yuri is back. Pereira goes like, "Oh wait, you drew with Blachowicz. I beat him." You know what I'm saying?
100%. I mean, this division is kind of in shambles from where it once was, and that's more so just due to the injuries of the guys that have been the champions as of late. Like since John Jones has left this division, there's just been a lot of question marks about light heavyweight in the UFC. This was the moneymaker division for the UFC back in the day with your Coutures, your Liddells, Rampage Jacksons, and obviously John Jones coming in, Shogun as well. But now it's like, you don't know. I mean, I think that's what is also a tough decision for the UFC. Like, what do we even do with this light heavyweight title? Like, I'm surprised we haven't heard anything yet. If this was for sure a title eliminator, even though we probably think it is with now Pereira winning, but it's like, we're not 100% sure. I mean, if you want to go into the marketing point, it's like, Ankalaev's a solid fighter, but are you buying a pay-per-view to see Ankalaev? Probably not.
Yeah, I think it probably has to be second. second from the top. If you have, maybe you have one of those people who do draw, and maybe an Alex Volkanovski fight or something like that. You could kind of put a second from the top. Blachowicz, I wouldn't have been surprised if he hung up the gloves. He didn't do that. So, what are you doing with him? I think he's much harder to find a matchup for.
He's in such a weird spot too, because he hasn't looked the same since he beat Adesanya to retain his title, his only title defense. And obviously that was a win because Izzy just showed that's why we have weight classes. Izzy kind of just got tired, and Jan just used his size to his advantage, loses the title to Glover, and then, bounces around, weird injury from a leg injury against Rakic, then the draw, and now a loss. Like, this is a tough spot for him. Like, obviously he seems like a guy that kind of wants to fight. Like, does he fight someone like Krylev, or does he fight a Johnny Walker? Does Paul Craig come back down or go back up to 205? Like, those are kind of the options, but I think you're definitely for sure going to play a longer waiting game with Jan now.
Yeah. What I'm doing is I'm going further down. I'm trying to get him a bounce back fight. And also, like, there's guys you don't believe in, but they keep winning, that eventually they kind of earned a shot at a bigger name. You know what I mean? Like, even though I don't believe this guy really is a contender, but you can't ignore it forever. Like, it was a long time I didn't believe Leon Edwards was a true contender. And then he kept winning. I'm like, oh, wow, this guy's good. So I'd give him someone like Alonzo Menifield. To me, it's a big bounce back if Blachowicz win. If he loses, he's probably done. And now you have another guy mixed with in Alonzo Menifield, who's on winning fights, on a nice little winning streak himself. That's a fight I would do.
That's not a bad idea either, especially with the way Alonzo's fighting right now, moving up the rankings. I'm fine with that fight. Or if you want to do like the old versus new, obviously Kennedy and Chukwu just moved into the top 15. Yeah, if he wins. Yeah.
He's fighting Dustin Jacoby, right?
I believe.
Yeah,
so.
Like next. I think it's next week's card. So, I would do something like Menifield, but I would have it be like the first fight of a pay per view, like open up the card, or maybe first and second fight of a pay per view, like not too high up the card, but
yeah, I'm fine with that.
This one we're gonna probably breeze through because the fight lasted about 40 seconds. But Derek Lewis versus Marcos Rogério de Lima. It's never good when you lose a fight like Stephen Thompson versus Michelle Bea the day before the fight, especially all the acrobatics type things those two guys can do. But if you're gonna fill someone in, and we don't get a flying knee from Michelle Bea, we get a flying knee from the Black Beast Derek Lewis. In all the after celebrations, it was like the best thing the UFC could do, and it worked out perfect.
It was the best we've seen Derek Lewis ever. I mean, in shape Derek Lewis that takes the weight cutting or the nutrition of this game serious. I think that was a huge thing for me. I mean, the guy had abs at the weigh-ins. He looked incredible. Flying knee to start, just an unbelievable performance. Gets it done in 33 seconds over Rogério de Lima, and really sets himself, because how heavyweight is, sets himself up like back in the mix when it looked like he was long gone and dead, would never get a chance at a title. Another performance or two like that, he's definitely back in the mix to fight for a title. And then just the antics with him, obviously taking his shorts off, doing a DX croc chop. I mean, like, the Derek Lewis that the UFC loves, the fun-loving, Black Beast, was back, and with the complete performance as well.
Yeah, I agree. So Derek Lewis is probably the only guy that could take his clothes off, and we wouldn't be like, all right, dude, come on, like, it's over the top celebration. But Derek Lewis it was super funny. Obviously, his post fight is funny. I'm sure his post fight that's probably going on right now is probably even better. How about the chin on Marcos Rogério de Lima? What I mean by that is he gets flying kneed by Derek Lewis right up, that lands clean on his chin. That, if that lands on somebody else, that might be fastest knockout. That might have topped Jorge Masvidal. But that would have been, I don't know, 2-3 seconds in. That might have been the record, but de Lima's chin holds up. So Jorge Masvidal, who was also in attendance, could have lost his own record.
Yeah, I mean, credit to Lima from there, but he couldn't even get out of the blocks after that. I think we were all just shocked to see. It's always crazy when someone starts a fight like that, but you normally see that in, lightweight, featherweight, bantamweight, but never at 265 pounds at heavyweight does someone sprint across the cage and land a flying knee like that, especially the size, the power that, Derek Lewis has. He weighed in at 263.3. He was probably near 300 pounds coming into the cage tonight. Like, that was insane. And just, De Lima ate it and then could never get out of the blocks and was just finished with some good ground and pound like 33 seconds later. And I was hoping we'd get a quick finish because that moment isn't the same if we go to the end of the first round. Like, it's a crazy moment, but we got another round. Like, then we have to question what's the cardio like of Derek Lewis. Like, it may have been there. It probably would have been a little bit more there than we'd seen in the past, but the hype of like in shape Derek Lewis will live on for another few months now.
Yeah, with the abs that he actually showed up, it was fantastic. I'm thinking about Marcus Lima. I'm sure he's trained for 3 months or 4 months for this fight. He's got a game plan. He's gonna come out. All right, I'm gonna circle. I'm gonna leg kick. I'm gonna circle, leg kick. And next minute he knows as soon as the fight starts, he's on his back with Derek Lewis dropping those hammers on him. He said to recover, almost went for an ankle lock. Then he made a huge mistake. He got in that what we call in wrestling referee's position with Derek Lewis behind him, and he turtled up and was eating shots. A lot of them were like deflecting, weren't landing clean. It's never going to look good when you have the all-time knockout king in the UFC punching, even if they're blocked in the arms, who's 265 pounds, banging you on both sides. He couldn't have stayed there. He had to do. What he had to do is he had to stand. When he's he had to get up to his feet. Probably going to eat 1 or 2 shots to get to his feet, but he was going to have to eat it. If not, staying in that turtle position or the referee's position, just a terrible look, terrible. The poor guy never got out. Like, if this was a horse race, like, he never got out of the what do they call that? Like, little
out of the chute. Yeah,
the chute. Yeah, he never got out. So, Derek Lewis. Well, I mean. He's also one of those guys, like, yeah, he loses a little bit of stock when he lost, but like, he still has his fans because that obviously they want the huge knockouts and all that, but yeah, he's still a draw. What would you do with him?
Well, I mean, obviously he's, like I said, he's now back in the mix at heavyweight to, with another performance like that, get himself a title fight. I'd love to see him. I know he's got a fight lined up at 293, but I'd love to see him fight Tai Tuivasa. I just think that'd be a fun fight. 2 fun-loving heavyweight personalities that would just stand and bang with each other. I would love to see that happen, but if that happens, it would probably be definitely beginning probably of next year if it does happen. But that to me seems like a fun fight. But we'll see what we get from Lewis, and I think the big thing is going into his next fight. Will he be able to stay as disciplined as he is with the nutrition? Because it seems like we've seen this cycle happen a little bit. This is the best in shape we've seen him, but then he kind of falls back into that.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm a heavyweight. I like to eat, and hopefully he can stay.
He lives in Texas, so at like 2 a.m. he can go into a Buc-ee's and get like I don't know if you're familiar with the Buc-ee's. That's an official sponsor of this show. My time in Texas is these gas stations called Buc-ee's, and it's almost like an insult to call it a gas station. You pull in, and I'm not lying, there's 150 pumps.
Oh wow!
And then you go in the store. The bathroom is the cleanest bathroom I've seen. It's like you walk in, and it not only is it clean, but it has 45 stalls and urinals everywhere. And then anything you want to buy in Buc-ee's in this gas station. Me and my family were in there like 2 a.m. in Dallas. Coming back from like we went to the rodeo in Fort Worth, and we stopped in the Buc-ee's and eating what was I eating? Like pulled pork sandwiches. There's someone in the middle, like 2 a.m. cooking pulled pork. It's absolutely fantastic. So I understand why Derek Lewis is fat living in Texas. So I understand how it'd be hard. Two of us would be fine. I mean, we've seen that fight before. So I was gonna go with. It's tough with Derek Lewis because he's been in the UFC so long. And when you go to the top guys, he's faced everyone, guys. So I'm gonna go with a guy that he hasn't, and I saw somebody else in the chat throw this out there. I apologize, John Butterfield. I'm gonna go with Josina Rosenstrike. have those two guys just because they haven't fought each other. I can see that being a fight night main event, or it could be on a pay-per-view, like second fight on a pay-per-view or something like that. Main card I'm talking about. Obviously not talking about the prelims. So, like, De Lima had a nice little run here, but kind of, show what he is. I'd book him against someone like Augusto Sakai on a prelims.
Yeah, I mean, De Lima on that run, he definitely overachieved. When you look at the opponents, like, he had a good win against the undefeated Waldo Cortez Acosta decision, and then submission against Arlovsky, but he was definitely punching up. Like, he never really looked like, this guy's ever going to fight for a title. Like, no disrespect for him, but he was definitely a nice heavyweight to have, but someone that is not going to make the top 5 or make a real run. But yeah, he's definitely someone that you can see right back on the prelims, and I don't think anyone would bat an eye.
Yeah, agreed. All right, before that, we had Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. So just to tell you how I prepare for this. I kind of have I have a notebook, and I give like fights like a full page of notes. I'll do half pages and I'll do like thirds just to kind of stay in this space and just to kind of make sure I'm not like going too long on because we still want to make this around 2 hours, not too long. It's already almost 2 a.m. Where do you live again?
I live in Ontario, Canada, so I'm the same time zone as you.
So you're same time zone, yeah. So it's I have way too more notes for the space I gave this fight. Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. Bobby Green won. I think with about 5 seconds left, he gets a submission, but he was cruising to a victory anyways. Gets a submission with Tony Ferguson going out cold. Let's put a pin on Bobby Green for a second, as Tony Ferguson is the bigger name. I've never been like the biggest Tony Ferguson fan. I never thought he was the greatest because of the moments he had, the amount of times he would take damage in fights that he'd always come back and win. I think about like a Orlando Venata fight and stuff like that. But that said, I don't want to see Tony Ferguson fight anymore. I don't want to see him get beat up anymore. The guy is shot. There's no way he's a shot fighter. Let me back up a second. So he was doing very well early. He dropped Bobby Green. Then there was an eye poke. It seemed like the entire fight changed. Do you think that eye poke was the changing point, or are you with me where it's like, no, it was going to happen anyways?
It was a changing point for the first round, but I think Bobby Green's speed and ability to just hit a slow reaction Tony Ferguson was going to be there anyway. It was just, to me, the eye poke switch, probably the only round Tony would have won if it went to the scorecards. This fight obviously 6 seconds away from going to the scorecards, but I mean, Bobby Green is a guy that's been in the game for forever, but he doesn't look like he's lost a step, where Tony just looks like he's at that point where he just looks like an old catcher's mitt. He's taken so much damage from so many fights that he's had that, brought us great entertainment, but he just looks like he's past it. Plus, he's got some stuff going on outside the cage, with that whole DUI thing, and I'd rather him figure that out. Get him set. Yeah, I'd like to see him get his life in gear instead of seeing him fight on a pay-per-view in the UFC, where I don't need to see Tony Ferguson fight anymore. Like, he had a great run. He seems like he wants to do good things. He seems downright he's a good dude that just made a couple mistakes. But we don't need to see him fight anymore. Especially him taking that much damage that he's been taking. He's a guy that is especially in the scenario here, he passed out. He didn't tap out. He passed out. He's one of those on his shield guys forever. So yeah, it seems like it's time for the UFC to have that talk with him.
Yeah. So there's some good things he still does. He still has good cardio. He still has good output. He still shows he has a little bit of pop if he can put you out early. Though Tony Ferguson was never the big puncher, even in his prime, he was more of a he beat you up cumulative. He's got the pocket knife who's slicing you up. He's not hitting you stabbing you with the big, fishing knife. But I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it. It's 2 a.m., so I can get away with this a little bit more than if this was at like 7. I think he has CTE, man. Like the amount of damage he's taken, to his brain. And then besides, we've seen him knocked out. He's lost 6 in a row. I think 4 by stoppage. There was also, the argument was, well, yeah, he's losing to guys, but it's the top guys. It's Justin Gaethje. It's Charles Oliveira, Beneil Dariush, Michael Chandler. Like, elite of the division. Then he lost to the ghost of Nate Diaz. And then he lost to Bobby Green, Bobby Green's a good fighter, but he's still like, a B-level fighter. He's, maybe close to top 15, but still, like, he's never going to win a UFC title or anything like that. So that's concerning that he's losing to lower level guys. But now he's getting submitted. And you mentioned he went out cold, but still he's getting submissions. The one thing about that run against the first 4 guys I said, the one thing you say is like how tough was Tony. He didn't get submitted by Charles Oliveira. He didn't get submitted by Beneil Dariush. That's not the case. He got submitted by Nate Diaz and Bobby Green, who are good grapplers, especially Nate. No for some, but not like
Nate's not as surprising because, like, obviously he came from a jiu-jitsu school, but Bobby Green hadn't submitted anyone in 10 years.
Yeah, no. But my thing is, Charles Oliveira has the most submissions in UFC history. Beneil Dariush is a former world champion.
Right, 100%. Yeah,
so like,
we're on the same page.
He didn't get submitted by those guys, but then got submitted by Nate, who, originally came in the UFC known for jiu-jitsu, but, the ghost of Nate Diaz, and then Bobby Green. I want to matchmake, and then we'll talk about Bobby Green in a second. We talk about the good things. I love Tony Ferguson's entrance. That was dope. Like the dance.
Tony Ferguson, he's got that ability. Like, the crowd chanted for him. They love him still. They remember the good times, right? But you have to live in 2023 and not 2015.
But he's a guy that you can have a talk with him, and all he's gonna think is like, "Oh, dude, you're a hater." Like, what are you talking about? I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm going to win 6 in a row now and win the time. He's like, and it's not like, oh, my brain is damaged. He thinks like his solution would be like, well, I was carrying the big dummy this one, but you know what? I gotta go get the pogo ball. Remember the old pogo ball as a kid? If I bounce on the pogo ball, I'll be a little more athletic, or if I blow bubbles and punch the bubbles in the air. Like, that's how he thinks. And obviously I'm having a little fun with this, but so if you want to keep now, even though I said I don't want to see him, if I'm running the UFC, I'm still using him. I wouldn't have booked him.
There, kind of at a point too with certain guys, like, I don't want to see you get, beat up too much or, have a near-death experience. Like, when he fought Chandler and knocked him out, like, that was a near-death experience to me. Yeah. Like, there was a moment there where I thought, oh my God, we've seen the first death, and it was Tony. And that was the fight to me that just changed everything for Tony Ferguson, because we'd never seen him take damage like that, and then he gets front kicked in the face, and his face goes face down on the octagon canvas. And he was definitely a past his prime fighter up to the Chandler fight, but that accelerated where he is to now. And now he's got some issues going on. He's definitely acting even more erratic, even though he was kind of an odd guy to begin with. So I would rather someone just be like, we need to focus on life after MMA.
Yeah. So I agree. And we understand that, the hardcores, we understand it. Like, we watch other events, we understand where he is. The problem is the casuals don't, and the casuals still react. He walks in the weigh-ins, he still gets one of the biggest pops. He says things at the press conference that don't even make sense. He gets the biggest pops. He has his people that, that's their favorite fighter. He's a lot of people's favorite fight. Like, there's certain guys that they're fun and entertaining, but they're not people's favorite fighter. Tony Ferguson is some people's favorite fighter. So if from a marketing, and this is where guys are going to hate me for doing this, but I definitely have that old boxing, and Ben always says this, I have that old boxing mentality where if I can get anything out of this, I'm still going to try to get something for him. If I can get over the next guy, I'm booking Tony one more time. And I wouldn't have done the Bobby Green because I feel like there's nothing much to go with Bobby Green. I'm picking – you're going to hate this. Everyone's going to hate this. I'm going to get so much shit. But Tony Ferguson's next fight should be another jiu-jitsu guy. And that jiu-jitsu guy should be from England. And he should have long blonde hair and look like a beetle. I'm talking about Paddy Pimblett. That's who I booked Tony Ferguson against next.
I mean, that seems like something the UFC would do in the sense of maybe getting another rub here for Paddy, as that seems to be a guy they really want to just accelerate the rocket ship to for his appeal, obviously overseas in England and what they think he can be. Man, that'd be wild if that happened. Like, it's not. This is MMA. I've seen crazier fights made. Like, it's not that far fetched, honestly.
No,
I wouldn't like to see it, but it's not that out far fetched.
You put on a pay-per-view. You put it third from the top on a pay-per-view. And imagine the press conference. Imagine those two guys barking at each other.
Well, that would be wild.
Yeah, that's what you do. And that doesn't even have to be in England. You can just put it anywhere. A lot of times I like keeping the English guys in England, but yeah, Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett in Las Vegas, I know Paddy's gonna be out, but if you could get him on that New York card, I don't think Paddy'd be back, but I know he's already talking about next year, but. If you could got him in that November card, the one in Madison Square Garden. But I mean, anyways, Bobby Green. It's funny on the feet. I thought he was kind of playing it safe in the third round. I thought if he turned it up, he could have stopped him on the feet because he was landing so clean. But do your stock? And then we'll get into the Bulls and the Bears later with stock. But your stock in Bobby Green? Do you feel better about Bobby Green moving forward than you did like 12 hours ago?
Well, it's tricky because we just spent, 10 minutes talking about a past his prime Tony Ferguson, but Bobby showed some, like he was able to land at will. And then when he felt the need to go get the submission there at the end, he did get the submission. But the third round against anyone else definitely would maybe not be that result for Bobby Green. He definitely had his hands down. He was almost inviting the chance of him to somehow lose this fight that he was in complete control with, which is never good. I'm sure his coaches were freaking out about that. But Bobby Green's a guy that the UFC kind of just loves to have for these exciting fights against these interesting, exciting style fighters where, as you said before, Keith, like he's never going to fight for a title, but he always puts on an exciting performance. You put him in there, against, Fiziev or something like that. It's going to be an exciting fight. I don't think he's going to win, but you make it for an exciting fight and you put it, somewhere high on the card, or like a Matt Frevola, for example. I see that in the chat here. I mean, those are the kind of fights I could see Bobby Green having going forward. Do I feel better about him? A little bit, but then I take that with a grain of salt about who his opponent was.
Yeah, I feel about the same. Like I know a lot of people like, oh, he got dropped by Tony and everything. I think that was more of, he got caught clean, but as soon as he picked up the timing of Tony, he was teeing off. Tony's different. I understand. Like I think the commentary team did a good job on that, talking about he lands from different angles and all that. So I'll give him that. I'm glad that Alan McDonough mentioned that was the exact name I had, Matt Frevola. He's kind of earned a bigger name. Bobby Green comes off a bigger name. Yeah, give me opener of a pay-per-view. Those two guys. I mean, they could open that New York. I mean, I know Ferrola's from Long Island. You could open that New York card. Again, I don't know if that's too quick of a turnaround, but if you can get them in November, open up that card. That works for me.
And Bobby Green's kind of that guy that would just somehow find a way to be on that card, right? Like,
yeah, oh yeah.
Unless his leg was cut off, he would not be able to fight.
And before that, we'll wrap up the main card. This one will probably be a lot quicker because, again, another quick fight. Kevin Holland took on Michael Chiesa, winning by first round. This time, let's talk about the winner first, and then we'll go to the loser. Kevin Holland. I thought Kevin Holland never looked better than he did today. Well, actually, let me ask you this, because I thought Michael Chiesa looked sharp. So I'll let you answer this. Is it so? Ben asked me this question. I always go with it. Probably in the middle. I like to give that. It's probably in the middle. So I'm gonna put you on the spot. Pick a team. Was Kevin Holland really good, or was Michael Chiesa really bad?
I would lean more the Kevin Holland looking really good. I know Chiesa's coming off like a 2-year layoff, but I think Chiesa would have looked fine or competent against anyone else. Like, you can tell that Holland is taking his career very serious. As I said before, he's brought in someone to actually teach him how to wrestle. He stuffed takedowns against Chiesa. Maybe a few years ago, this fight finds its way to the ground and Holland's got to fight off his back. But Holland was the one dictating. Holland was striking really well, landing crisply against Chiesa. He stuffed the takedowns. And when there was the scramble, it was Holland that locked up that Darce choke and got the submission. So I'm team improved Kevin Holland.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, at one point, Chiesa was deep on his hips, and he was able to pressure in with, like, when someone's in your hips, you actually have to overpower them off balance with your hips. He did a good job at that, getting back up to the upper body. I thought on the feet, he was selecting his shots really well. He knew Chiesa wanted to shoot, so he was feinting him, trying to draw those shots, and then countering when Chiesa was coming back up. When he missed the shot. I thought that was good. You talk about taking it more serious. Obviously, submission threat. I love that he talked about watching film. Like, what? He's like, I was watching film with Neil Magny. Neil Magny could have won that fight if he did this. And I'm like, wow, Kevin Holland watching film? Like, that's funny. So yeah, now and then obviously the biggest one, he has raw ability. I mean, he's tall, he's long and lengthy for the weight class. He's athletic. I've always talked about how quick he can cut off the cage by, like, he's used those long legs, take one step. But it was always been, I would think about the Marvin Vettori fight and the Derek Brunson fight, and these big middleweights, that wrestlers who hold him down. That's not the case at welterweight. Obviously, there's some really good wrestlers. We get into that, but what I am impressed with is that he's a guy who seemed like he was just a paycheck for him. Like, I'm having fun, he's living in the moment. Now he's taking a little more serious, and he's at 30 years old, so he's in his prime age. I like that. Now, Chiesa, I know I didn't let you take both, but I'm gonna, because he looked shot to me. He's always been a one-dimensional fighter, but he's found ways to make it work. What worried me is not that he couldn't get the takedown, because that just happens sometimes, was his reaction when he was getting hit.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't reacting good.
He was reacting like he had a swarm of bees around him or something like that. Like, there were weird reactions. Like, something like the first punch that landed from Holland was like, Chiesa's in a world of trouble. Like, this fight's over. Like, you could tell it was over 10 seconds in. I know Chiesa's had some serious issues with his back. I believe cage rush is a real thing. I know he took his gloves off. I thought maybe he was going to retire in there at that moment. I'd like to see him have one more fight. He had a full camp in. He got maybe the cage rust out of him. One more fight. But if he decides to retire, this guy's got a great post-MMA career. He does excellent commentary work on LFA. Like, he's got a good landing spot. He does good analyst work for the UFC. Like, he's going to be okay. He's not one of those guys where it's like, I have no idea what's going to happen with this. He's going to be okay. And I think he adds great insight. He has a great personality. He's more exciting outside of the octagon than in for most of his career. So I would like to see him have one more fight, but then fall back into the media stuff, because he's excellent at that.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to actually see him doing some of the commentary for the UFC, not just the what do they call that, like the back analyst side.
Yeah,
I would like him actually being in the booth. I mean,
I'd love him on Contender Series this year. That's kind of their tryout spot. I'd love to see him on Contender Series.
I think he'd do a great job.
He does a great job with the LFA broadcasts, and I think he'd just do a great job with the UFC.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'd like to see him do that. Back surgery is tough. Back surgery is. He didn't have the surgery, but he talked about, like, he needs back surgery, which is always. I mean, DC talked about he couldn't trained. It really ruined Tito Ortiz's career when he had back surgery. I mean, his was more neck, but still, like, that just backbone connects to the neck bone. Song. If this is, because he took off the gloves, maybe he had a change of heart, that spur of the moment kind of thing. If we don't see Michael Chiesa again, what will you remember him for? Like, what give me some memories.
The Ultimate Fighter season 13 live, where, like, he won the season and his dad passed away during the filming of that. That would be a big thing, because I can't even imagine what it's like where you're forced to focus on your goal, but there's a huge existential crisis at home that your dad would want you to be there. So, and he powered through and won. It's like, how many times do you see someone have those stories on that show and actually win the whole thing? It's usually like one fight win, and then the emotion of what they're thinking back at home catches up with them. But he powered through and won. And then probably, if I think of Michael Chiesa, then definitely the Kevin Lee moment at the press conference there.
So something to do with his mom and his dad. Yeah. That was so blown up because the funny thing about that moment was Kevin Lee was not talking bad about his mom. He was talking about, I'm going to embarrass you in front of your family. Like, he's like, oh, I know his mom's going to be there. Like, he wasn't like saying like I'm getting down with his mom. It was just like, yeah, I'm going to beat you up in front of your mom. But like, it was just funny. He like super overreacted, like he was talking shit about his mom or something. But like fight and winning the ultimate. You watch these contender series and they always have a sad story. My cousin died and I used to train with him, something like that. But it's always, 6 months ago or 2 years ago. No, this was like my dad died Tuesday and I'm fighting Friday, whatever it was. Like, he was cutting weight at his dad's funeral kind of thing, So shout out to my boy Kyle Steele. If some of you guys are familiar with him, he was Loudmouth MMA podcast. That's his favorite fighter, Michael Chiesa, which is, we talk about people, favorite fighters. Not many people mention Michael Chiesa, but he was not an MMA fan. He was, a stick and ball sports kind of guy. And somehow that was the season where he watched The Ultimate Fighter and decided to watch MMA, and Michael Chiesa won it. And he, kind of thing like, wow, I was rooting for him because of his dad and everything, and just followed his career. And was, he went into MMA media and stuff. So he can, you try not to have a favorite fighter, but he always said like, hey, Michael Chiesa is the guy who got me into MMA. So shout out to Kyle. And the other thing I'll remember about Michael Chiesa, again, if this is the last time we see of him, is being in 2018, 2019, 2020, being a ranked fighter and really being a one-dimensional fighter. Like that's rare. You either are well-rounded ranked fighter or you're one-dimensional and there's like a peak. It's never that high. He was never known for his striking. He was a wrestler, but if you really dig into his background, he was never, he wasn't an NCAA All-American or anything like that. He's got jiu-jitsu, but he was never a world champion. Like he found a way to make his style of MMA work, his long arms and everything. So that said, if he wants to fight again, I'm doing what I just did with Tony Ferguson. I'm getting over the next guy. So I'm booking him against, and I apologize if I butcher his name, but Renat Fakhretdinov, the guy who just knocked out Kevin Lee.
That's a tough matchup for Chiesa.
I know. I'm using Chiesa's name to get over the next guy.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I think, like I said, I think that Chiesa definitely deserves another chance. I mean, I was thinking maybe Sean Brady, but that's definitely going to be a huge, mismatch as well. But Brady's kind of in the same spot as Chiesa, where he just hasn't been inactive because of injury, right? So, and I said cage rush is a thing. So what's the cage rush going to be? Brady's still coming off a loss that we're trying to see what he can do as he's trying to
Sean
get
Brady?
himself up. Yeah.
Yeah, they just fought though. That was Chiesa's fight right before this.
It was. My bad. It just shows that was in 2021, right? So that was so long ago. So maybe that was a fight that I thought about, but maybe that's why I thought about it, because they actually did fight.
But there's other guys. There's Michael Morales in that division.
That'd be a fun one too. Kind of the same thing as Fakhretdin there, where undefeated guy, 15-0 or something like that. That Morales is. Yeah, I could see that for sure.
Those guys in the chat give me shit about the Fakhretdinov guys. You should remember by now. So I put on two hats when I do the show. First is Keith Schillen, just the MMA analyst who like has a heart. So I don't want to see Tony Ferguson. I don't want to see them. But then when I do the matchmaking, remember now I'm Tony. Now I'm matchmaking Tony Ferguson. I'm matchmaking Michael Chiesa. I'm Keith Schillen, the MMA promoter who needs to make money. So that's why I'm heartless at that point. So that's where you're going. And then Dev's giving me shit and he says, book him against Ian Gary. Yeah, okay, thanks. that's even better than that. You're even more merciful than I am there. Kevin Holland, he talked about, he said, oh, I love eating steak and having sex to make weight. He wants to move back up 25. Don't do that. That would be a terrible move for him. He's way better at 170. If I'm him, if I'm the UFC, and I'm not letting him. Like, nope, you're fighting at 170. Next fight's booked at 170. You agree or disagree?
Oh, 100% 170. 170 is the weight class for him. I know it sucks that you got to cut weight, but sometimes you got to be the bigger guy in a smaller division than stay at 185, where we kind of saw how that trail ended for him. Even though he's much more improved and actually, watching film, and if he can, take a business-like aspect like he did this week against Chiesa, I think that'd be great. But yeah, 170 is the weight class for him.
Yeah, give me a name. Who should he fight next?
For Kevin Holland here, if he's going to stick at 170 pounds, I'd love a Jeff Neal fight. That seems fun for Kevin Holland. I would like to see that. I know he's bounced around.
So Jeff Neal's fighting Ian Gary. Does it affect if he wins or loses, or you match him no matter what?
The fight I think I can get from Jeff Neal against Ian Gary, if he looks solid in there, I would still make that fight. I think the styles just make great fights, and that's really, at the end of the day, what the UFC is kind of all about. Exciting fights and exciting moments so they can get, especially if it's a fight night, which that probably would be, on Sports Center and things like that. But there's, other guys out there that maybe you want to try to push up at 170 pounds. I know Jack Della Maddalena's coming off a performance where he wants to get back after not looking that great. Maybe that's a fight you make as well. I think it'd be a good test for both.
Ooh, yeah, Jack Della Maddalena. I'm trying to keep those new. Like I still look at Kevin Lee because he's been in the UFC a while, but he's in the division shortly. So I kind of put him like I kind of have three categories when I think of fighters. It's either like top contenders. Give me four categories. Top contenders who are legit, still fighting. Those are obviously Leon Edwards, Colby Covington, Bilal Muhammad, a couple of guys like that. Then I think of guys who are former contenders who are kind of aging down away. Stephen Thompson, who RDA, Vicente Luque, a couple of other guys fit. Then I have my rising stars. Jack Della Maddalena, Shavkat Rakhmonov. I put Kevin Holland in that category because he's still only 30. He's on a winning, and then I have like the fourth category, just like everybody else, like the tough veterans, like Alex Moronos, your Tim Means, like those guys. I'm gonna give Holland a fight night main event. I'm gonna put him in. So one thing the reason I said that is I try to keep my young guys away from each other. Like it's very rare for me to say young guy and young guy. I really don't do that. So I'm doing Kevin Holland. I'm putting him fight night main event against the winner of Vicente Luque, Rafael dos Anjos.
Yeah, I don't mind those options either. I mean, especially, Luque and dos Anjos is kind of one of those status guys, even though he's not like a star, but if he loses, whatever, if he wins, it's great for him kind of in the UFC right now.
All right, let's move on. That was the main card. Let's go to the prelims. We'll go to the prelims a little quicker than we do the main card. Guy that I'm sure is going high on everybody's list. Gabriel Bonfim took on Trevin Giles. This is supposed to be like the first true veteran test for him. And Bonfim ran right through Trevin Giles, getting a first-round sub. Let me ask you this question. I'm going to put you on the spot. How high can this guy go? Is he a future champion? Is he a future contender? Top 15? Is this the peak? Like, what do you think of this guy? Now, mind you, hold on. Sorry to interrupt. He's only 25 years old. He's got 15 wins, 15 stoppages, including 2 wins in the UFC, both by stoppage. So how high can this guy go?
He can go far. I think we need to see him to be a little bit more well-rounded, but I think he can go far. I mean, 15 wins and 12 of your 15 wins are submission like he had tonight. I mean, that's no joke where you're a threat anywhere and everywhere. I mean, even Trevin Giles, once he got caught in that guillotine, he tried to break it and realized this grip's too strong and I have to tap in and call it a night. But I'm high on Bonfim. I mean, him and his brother are, cool stories as well. Both came from the Contender Series. I think there's a lot of good potential in him. And, the UFC, they always love to have these Brazilians come down the pipeline. He seems to be the next one. He seems like he can be a more well-rounded Damian Maia. If he can really work on the striking a little bit, I think he has potential to definitely get into at least the top 5, maybe fight for a title. He's fighting in a pretty tough weight class.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things I want to say. So first of all, the thing that just jumps out at me, and I know I sound like a broken record for people who watch previous shows and stuff when I talk about young fighters, 25 years old. Like that's the first thing I circle, 25. He's probably 3, 4, 5 years away from his prime. So
yeah,
that's at the age where you're still making big jumps in improvement year by year by year. And I think about the people that are top contenders right now that were young and we wrote them off. Like, oh, they lose 1 or 2 fights, they're done. I think about going back to like Robbie Lawler when he lost to Pete Spratt. And I'm going way back, but people wrote him off. Recently, Macy Barber lost, run him off. Alexa Grasso had a terrible showing against I can't remember who it was. She lost to somebody that she shouldn't have lost to. Wrote off. Like, then she beats, wins, goes on a winning streak because she's young, beats, Shevchenko. So that thing that jumps out to me, like we're not even close to seeing a finished product. And like, yeah, Dev said in the chat, like beating Trevor Giles really doesn't, he's doing a like wait and see approach with that. It's not the best win. But how he did it, manhandled him, got in and like body slams him, just to show the strength he had and finishing ability. There is a like new, we just were talking about this like crop of, if you want to put Kevin Holland there, I understand. I hope people don't, but newer guys in this like, the contenders, like the new class is coming in. Fakhretdinov, Ian Gary, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Michael Morales, Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, people who still believe in Sean Brady, now Bonfim. Like that division is loaded with young talent.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes,
to me, Ben likes doing this, like rank them, who's number 1, who's number 2. I'm not making you do that or asking you to do that, but anybody wants to put him number 1, like I'm cool with that. If anybody wants to put him dead last, like I'm high on all these guys, so I get it. But to me, this guy's the limit for this guy. Like he could he be the champion one day? Yeah, I think he could. I'm not predicting it. I don't do that, but like he could.
There's just so much room for improvement for him, and there's only just a small sample size for him in the UFC. Like 2 finishes in the UFC, and this one just went over a minute 13. The other one was 49 seconds. Like we haven't seen a lot from him, but there's so much room for him to improve. If someone can stuff the takedown, stop some submission attempts, it'll be a real test. But when you have 15 wins and 12 of them are by submission, you're just a threat everywhere. And that's a problem for a lot of guys at that weight class. And right now he's also, and as you said, 25, he's grooving, he's confident. And that also makes him scary. He's got a lot of confidence for where, especially if the fight hits the ground, what he can do there. I would just like to see him, work on some striking, see what he can do there. Only 3 finishes have come by TKO or KO. But there's so much room to grow for him. And that's a positive for a division, as you said, Keith, is kind of having a nice youth movement in it, which every division needs to have at some point, and welterweight's having that.
Yeah, so it's funny. I almost said Felice Herrig. I thought that was a fight that I'm like, oh wait, did she win a split decision in that one? Or no, she actually did. She lost to Felice Herrig. So that was So who would have guessed after she lost to Felice Herrig that she would have beat Valentina Shevchenko and get a stoppage over? No, I understand. I mean, there's a lot of fights in between, but you get my point is, I want Bonfim to get another tough test, tougher veteran than Giles, even but not a huge step up because he's so young. You're talking about being well-rounded. He's 25. Like he's still going to add power punching. Like, but that you really come to your power like 28, 29, 30, 31. So he's still really far away. Give me a guy that if you beat him, he's tends to be a little bit of a favorite on our show. He'll never be a title challenger or anything like that. But if you beat him, you're good. Give me Alex Morono.
I like that. Yeah. Like Alex Morono's kind of in that gatekeeper role-ish for getting to the next tier at welterweight. Like there's entry level, then there's like I can be a player, and then a serious contender. And Morono's kind of one of those guys. Like does some great commentary work as well, but he's a tough guy to fight in there. Tough to finish if you finish him, good for you. But I'd like to see that as well. Some of the fights I'm thinking of too are just mixing up the young guys against each other, which I know you don't like, and I don't think the UFC either likes that either. They don't want to see those young guys, and kill a prospect beforehand, which they've kind of done at featherweight.
Yeah, the only time I'll put two like young ones is if one guy I really believe in and the other one is like, yeah, he's kind of, this guy's he's not really, and I don't mind that. But when there's people like all those people I named are all future, I don't want to say contenders. You get my point. There's like a lot of promise in all them. Earlier I said the worst fight of the night was Alex Pereira versus Jan Blachowicz. A lot of people said Vinicius Salvador versus CJ Vergara was the worst one. Here or there. Vergara won a unanimous decision. This was probably the closest fight on the card, where I really believe it could have been 29-28 either way. I think Salvador clearly won the first. I thought Vergara won the third. It came down to the second, how you scored that, really close. Salvador looked better the first half of the second round, and Vergara looked better the second half. So, put you on the spot. How did you score this fight?
I had it 29-28 for Vergara. I wouldn't say it was a bad fight. It was a weird fight where way too much posing from both men who you don't need to pose so much in there, especially if you're Vinicius here, who's missed weight by 2.5 pounds. You need to get in there and try to make a statement here. You've already, deducted 20% of your purse. You need to go out there and try to put on a show. And if you're Vergara, I was shocked he just kind of let the posing happen and didn't really put his foot on and try to make his opponent pay for missing weight. It was such a weird performance for both men. I mean, for Vergara, he gets a win. He lives to see another day. For Vinicius Salvador, I don't think he will see another day in the UFC. I think he's now, 0-2, 0-3 in the UFC. You've just missed weight. I think they send you back to Brazil or to the regionals in the States.
Marcus Musson mentioned the part where they walked away from it.
Yeah, that was bizarre.
Well, that's not exactly what happened. Salvador wanted to do his he wants to pretend to be Anderson Silva against the cage and have you throw punches against him, and he blocks them all. And so he started saying, he waved him on, I'm going to go to the cage and do that. And Vergara was like, I'm not playing your game. I'll tell you this, if someone wants to put their back against the cage and let me throw punches at them, I would take that all day. And when they start throwing punches back, I might back off and say, okay, that was fun. But for those 3 or 4 seconds, you just let me throw punches, you're not going to throw punches back. No, take that. Anyways, especially don't go to the head, go to the body. I'll say this about why I thought Vergara won. And are you on MMA Decisions?
I am not, but I am very familiar with the site.
All right, let's get this guy on MMA Decisions. Do you want someone reach out to me? Get my man on MMA Decisions. So, I usually count. I let them. I don't see who scored. But I'll say this: Vergara won that fight because as the fight went on, he did turn up the pressure a little bit, and that was the difference. He really upped his output a little bit. I wonder, this fight was close. I wonder if Salvador made weight, if it would have been close. If he had, I think it was missed by 3 pounds, 2.5 pounds, something like that.
2.5, yeah.
That 2.5 at 125 is a lot because that's 1% of their body or something like that. No, that's wait. No, what the hell am I talking about? 2% of their body? That's a lot. Yeah. It'd be like a heavyweight losing 50 pounds. Okay. Obviously I'm exaggerating, but you get what I say. If he was drained, if he had to drop those extra 2.5, 3 pounds, would this fight even been close? Now, who knows? But I'm just curious. I
don't know. I mean, Vergara's, seeing him on the regional scene, a very exciting prospect. Had a huge win against, Jacob Silva back in, Fury in Texas. And then he's kind of been all over the place. He's fought some good flyweights. His 2 losses in the UFC are to Ode Osborne by decision, and then to maybe the best Japanese prospect he's had in 10 years in Tetsura Taira. But I don't know if this fight would have been any different if Vinicius made weight. It seemed like their styles were kind of just to be just a little bit of the showmanship from Vinicius, And Vergara, maybe it was the elevation affecting him a bit too. Didn't really get to put the output in there. Didn't really follow his coaching that much as well. There were moments where like, go after it. And he kind of just a little too hesitant. I don't think it would have been that much of a difference.
Yeah. And I wonder if there was some of that, like pacing yourself, being that you're in Salt Lake, because usually both these guys are high output guys. Like Vergara's usually, Salvador's usually like a wild man throwing these huge looping hooks, and Vergara is just like, that's how he got hurt in his last fight, marching guys down, just walking through punches. And I didn't get a good read. Like, this is not how I expected. I expected there's a high slugfest, and it really it was later on in the fight. It just maybe they were pacing themselves, and then the third round they're like, all right, now I can let everything go. I don't really know, but not the fight I expected to see. Before that, Roman Kovalev took on Claudio Ribeiro. Claudio had a brief moment where he hurt Kovalev. He didn't. Suddenly he started grappling instead of keep swinging punches. I don't think he was as hurt as people think, but before that and after that. So other than that, like 10 seconds, 12 seconds or whatever, Kovalev looked crisp. It's 2 fights in a row where he's looked sharp, good, like nice snapping shots, good variety. Then he lands this high kick that. Listen, I went to the movies today. I saw the Oppenheimer movie, really good movie. I don't know if the atomic bomb landed as hard as that high kick did. Like that was the real atomic bomb, that high kick. Don't at me.
It sounded like an Ohtani home run. Like the Angels are playing the Jays this weekend. Like it sounded like an Ohtani home run. Like the sound of that shin on the jaw of Ribeiro was insane, and good for Kovalev. This is a guy that started out in the UFC 0-2. He's now won 3 in a row, all by finish, and highlights his performance here with one of the best finishes of the UFC this year, and really makes a statement for himself moving forward. I mean, post-fight called out Sean Strickland, which Joe Rogan instantly shot down.
Yeah,
but he still wants to fight it. But hey, I like a guy shooting his shot.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to that a little bit later. Yeah, Claudio Ribeiro, him not going unconscious, like he went down and was clearly out, but he was still like conscious. Like his eyes were open. He might have thought like he was in Salt Lake City, but he might have thought he was in like, Boston or something, because his faculties were in it, but he was still conscious. If he goes completely out, it's knockout of the year, or it's in the we're nominating for the Sherdog knockout of the year. That didn't happen, but Kovalev 2 fights in a row looks really, 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 really good. And before, don't at me about the old dropping the atomic bomb joke. That you have to be like 90 years old to remember that. So I don't think any 90-year-old Japanese people are watching this show right now. But if they are, sorry. Before that, Jake Matthews took on Darius Flowers. I want to pause on the groin strike. I'm going to talk that at the end because I'll see if you're on the same page as me. I was surprised Matthews didn't wrestle earlier because he had such a huge advantage wrestling. I was really surprised by that. But I thought his hands looked good. And when Matthews, Flowers went for a takedown and Matthews ended up on top in the second period, you could see him mentally break Flowers. Like not just physically, he mentally broke. And yeah, that was a UFC veteran versus a guy that probably isn't UFC level.
Well, taking the fight on short notice too, so Jake Matthews can get this opportunity on the card. Flowers has been a fine prospect. I believe he's supposed to fight on Contender Series this year, or has fought on Contender Series actually last year, and had a very memorable way to win where he power bombed his opponent and then dislocated his shoulder. And that's how he got his contract. So didn't really get to maybe showcase the full range skills that he had. But yeah, I mean, Matthews looked good. He had the size advantage. Once he got the fight to the ground, he looked fantastic, closed the show, and then eventually got the finish. But then, the biggest moment of the fight was the phantom low blow that Flowers did get in his favor, even though replay showed it looked clearly like a clean kick to the body.
See, this is where we're going to disagree. So, yes, they kept talking about like the the initial, what were they going like the initial blow was to the gut with the toes. I agree. The problem is the heel hits the groin, and even though like most of the pressure is in the gut, like if you take your heel and you hit me in the nuts, I'm going to be hurt. So this is how I view groin strikes. If you hit the groin at all, that's a groin strike because you don't know how much effect that had on his nuts.
Fair enough. I mean, I didn't see the heel from when I looked at the replay. I think I was just because I was maybe more focused on the toes jabbing at the lower part of his body. But yeah, I mean, Flowers, he said he was hurt. I think credit to Jake Matthews too, where Joe Rogan tried to bait him into like, he was fake. And he was like, well, the ref called it a low blow. I have to accept that. And I have to be better with where I land my strikes. I'm like, that's a professional mentality to have. He didn't buy into any of that. He just was like, I got to be better with where I land my kicks, and moved on and ended up finishing the fight.
Yeah. So, I mean, Matthews just way better than Flowers. That was a mismatch. Before that, another kind of controversial fight. Matthew Semelsberger took on Uros Medic. Uros Medic winning by third round TKO. Really, really fun scrap. Exactly how I expected. Semelsberger almost knocked out Medic early and often in the first fight. Basically let him off the hook. I think at one point he was wrestling. He should have stepped back and threw more punches. Medic survived. Medic started winning like a long range kickboxing until he lands a big shot, then hits him with a spinning back forearm and finishes him off. Let me ask you, what was your thoughts on the stoppage?
It seemed a tad quick, but I didn't hate it. Like, Semelsberger looked really hurt, and he did go down violently, and he probably would have maybe been TKO'd from punches coming down with ground and pound. So I didn't hate it. But you could kind of tell what the officials in Salt Lake City that were the local officials, how they kind of view things. It's like, as soon as you're hurt on the ground, they're hopping in to stop this fight. Whether, I know we had some good referees, like we had Herb Dean, we had Mark Goddard on this card as well. But the local guys from Salt Lake City, they had some chances. Yeah, they had their moments. But I didn't hate this one as well. This wasn't a Texas commission.
I said that from Salt Lake City, so they're Mormons. They got to be really
they're
nice.
Mormons. Yeah. But I didn't hate it. I didn't hate this stoppage as much as like some of the ones we've seen in Texas or anything like that.
Yeah, so I feel like this. I didn't hate the stoppage, but I feel like, and people heard me say this a lot, this is the perfect stoppage. It's like, I think about like our screen right now, you see like the Sherdog logo is right in between us. That logo is a perfect stoppage all the way to the one all the way over here. Where can I get my hand? Here is the line. Say that's like where it's acceptable, but it's a little early. And then all the way to your line on your side, it's acceptable, but a little late. You obviously want to be right down the middle. I felt like this was on the early side. So I still think it was acceptable. It wasn't perfect. But my issue is Semelsberger had Medic hurt just as bad in the first round, and you let him recover and fight. Why, like, to me, it was like he didn't get the same. And again, it was a little different. When Medic went down, he was trying to throw some like push kicks and everything instead of like more turtling. I think he could have let him land one or two more shots. That's all.
He for sure could have. It could be just the flurry that Medic had, because all of a sudden Medic just like hit this Tekken or Mortal Kombat like special where he just landed a couple good combos, then bam to the spinning back fist, and all of a sudden Semelsberger's down. Like, it may have looked more violent, or how Semelsberger was. Like, I'm not the official in there, and how he went down and could have seemed more hurt. But I didn't hate the stoppage. But a highlight reel finish and a highlight reel performance. And then how about Medic? He was basically working for the Salt Lake City Tourist Board, saying he wants to move there. He loves it. He gets the best of both skiing and, and everything. Like, so, I mean, if anyone's ever wanted to move to Salt Lake City and make it seem appealing, Uros Medic was doing his best.
Yeah, he's going
to make that happen for people.
You have to convert to Mormon or something. He was all about it. So, I just want to make it very clear. I'm not saying it was a controversial, like, I had it 1-1 heading into the third round. That was probably going to win him the fight anyways. Again, who knows, but looking that way. So And before that, Miranda Maverick took on Priscilla Cachoeira, winning by third round sub. I just think it was a really good like rebound fight for Maverick taking on short notice. We had a little bit. Well, let me ask you, when did you start watching MMA?
Probably diehardish, like 2007, 2008. Like I dabbled as a kid with like early UFC tapes.
But so would that be like George, a little bit after George St. No, that'd be like peak George St. Pierre?
Like just around the time of like George's big run with the welterweight title.
All right, so you won't remember this then. But we had a little bit, I thought we had a little bit of Morello Bustamante, Matt Lindland, where Morello Bustamante was middleweight champion of the world, and he submitted Matt Lindland twice in the same night. What happened is Morello Bustamante had Matt Lindland in a submission. I believe it was an armbar. I believe it was an armbar. Matt Lindland, like, phantom tapped. I think it was John McCarthy stopped it. Matt Lindland goes, I didn't tap. And he goes, extends him back and fight. And he's like, oh, yeah, I don't think you did tap. Let's fight again. And then Morello Bustamante submits him again. I think that's what happened here, Miranda Maverick. Miranda Maverick had an armbar. It looked like Priscilla Cachoeira had tapped. Miranda Maverick loosened up again. And then all of a sudden, got him again. Like, oh, okay. And then taps her again. Miranda Maverick, I don't want to say mismatched like it was Matthews Flowers, but she was too fast for her. It was very smart for her to really initiate wrestling where it seemed like Cachoeira's really only shot was landing some big shots. So Priscilla Cachoeira had won 4 out of 5 before this, but she's been subbed back to, her 2 losses and now 4 out of 6. Her 2 losses were people took the fight to the ground and submitted her. Miranda Maverick, also Jillian Robertson. So to me, Maverick's still young, so I definitely think there's some promise. But to me, this says more about Cachoeira. Like, that run was like right opponent, right time. That's what I feel about Cachoeira.
Yeah, I felt like this was a bad stylist. I mean, a great opportunity for Miranda Maverick to come in and use her wrestling and really control the fight, where Cachoeira is preparing for Joanne Wood. It's a striker, more of that kind of a matchup. But for Maverick, too, to get the bad taste out of her mouth after a kind of shocking bad performance against Jasmine Jazz Davicius, who, I've known Jazz since, her time on the amateur scenes here in Ontario. And I was blown away by her performance in that fight. She's excellent. I mean, she made a statement in that win against Miranda. And then Miranda was able to bounce back here, showcase her rest. It was kind of one of those fights where I'm like, she's just going to, wrestle her way to a 30-27, 30-26 decision. And then she put the foot on the gas late in the third round, got the submission, not once but twice. And for Priscilla Cachoeira, those dirty tactics are out there. Remember in the Jillian Robertson fight, she did some dirty stuff. And then she was like grabbing the glove here. It's like, how would hate to fight this girl.
We mention it every single time about her clawing the eyes of Jillian Robertson. This wasn't on purpose, but at one point in this fight, her hand went through the bra of Miranda Maverick. I'm very thankful for – so Miranda Maverick's a very conservative Christian woman. She's always posting things about Jesus and stuff. I'm very glad for her that she was facing downward. So when I think her boob popped out, that it was like you couldn't see it. Yeah. Because all the freaking perverts here would have made a meme out of it, and just to see a little like side boob or something. So for very young, she's not Paige VanZant. That's all I'm saying. She's not the girl. She's not the girl who would celebrate the boxing win by flashing the crowd. So I'm glad that we didn't have a very bad wardrobe misfunction for Miranda Maverick. So there you guys have it. We have covered all the fights. Let's get to the fun stuff. So we do the awards a little different, Jason. We like to say so there was 4 performance bonuses, no fight of the night. So we don't guess what the UFC picked. We just say this. Okay, this is the criteria. 4 performance bonuses. Kiwi, thank you for that. And okay, these 4 performance bonuses. Okay, what would you have like? What was the 4 you would have picked?
4 performance bonuses, you mean for like best fights or best performances, I guess, in general?
So this is best performance. So they didn't give out a fight of the night. They went 4 performances. So you're in charge, and then I'll tell you who the UFC actually decided.
We got to give one to Justin Gaethje.
Okay.
I think that's.
Sorry to interrupt you. We'll throw it out to the chat too. Tell us yours, and I'll read them.
I'll go Justin Gaethje, Derek Lewis, Kevin Holland, and Gabriel Bonfim.
All right. Let's see what Justin Gaethje for sure. Like that's. I mean, you knock out Dustin Poirier, you get one. I probably go with. I agree with you. I agree with Lewis and Holland and Bonfim. Yeah. I'm gonna go right across the board. I think you have the 4 best. If we had to pick a fight tonight, I probably would have went Summelsberger, Medish.
Yeah.
But I'm glad the UFC went with the 4 performances bonuses. We didn't mention Roman Kopylov, so he kind of the odd person out.
He got out head kicked.
Yeah, it's just Dev goes Justin, Bobby Green, Derek Lewis, and Bonfim. So he didn't go Holland. Ninja Kitty goes Roman Kopylov. Alan McDonald goes Gaethje, Lewis, Kopylov, and Bonfim. So a lot of similarities. So basically everyone's unanimous on Gaethje and Lewis. Gaethje and Lewis both got performance bonuses. A couple of us mentioned Holland. A couple of us mentioned Bonfim. I think Dev went with Green. A couple of people went Kopylov. Holland did get a performance bonus. Here's the one. So Bonfim didn't get one. Kopylov did not get one. So them two did not get it. It was Bobby Green who got the 4th bonus, which I think that's a little more name, getting a submission very late over Tony Ferguson. Name. But what Bonfim did and what Kopylov did, I would have went Bonfim, but Bobby Green got a little richer. So, all right, let's do the cut list. Do you have anybody for the cut list?
Yes, I would definitely cut Vinicius Salvador. I think you're now 0-2 in the UFC. You didn't make weight, which is always a no-no. And especially in a weight class that's really starting to heat up at 125. And you fought bizarre. Like, it's not like you tried to push the pace or anything. And, if you gassed out after the first round, I think a lot of people would have commended you tried to push the pace in the first. You thought you were Anderson Silva, where Anderson Silva could get away with that, against Talis Latis and Damian Maia. He was the champion and had some name recognition. He wasn't going to get cut. You were definitely very cuttable, and I expect him to get cut, especially with Contender Series coming around the corner, and a lot of fresh blood can come in, and Vinicius can definitely be replaced.
RC Kim is calling for Michelle Pereira to be cut. I disagree with that. As far as cut lists, the way we do it, if both of us have the same person on the list, we cut them. And we do have a cut because I also had Vinicius Salvador on my list, the only one on my list, so it's unanimous. We're saying the UFC should cut him. Not often do I pick flyweights because they need bodies, but he's not a flyweight because he doesn't make weight. So, the winless and missing weight is always a night, and then not having the best performance, always a good way to get cut. Let's go to the Bulls and the Bears. The Bulls and Bears are a stock market reference. When things are going good, it's a bull stock or bull market. When things are going bad, it's a bear market or bear stock. We do it hockey style. You're from Canada, just like my wife. I don't know if you knew this. My wife's Canadian, so she's from New Brunswick.
Okay, out east.
So we do it hockey style. We kind of do like a 3 stars of the night, so you can kind of pick up the 3. Do you want to go positive or negative?
I'll go positive. I'll keep the Canadian positive vibes.
All right, give me some Bears. Let's see start with number 3, and then work your way up to. I'm sorry, not Bulls. You want to be positive. I'm sorry. Start with number 3 and work your way up to number 1. So number 1 be whose stock rose the best.
I would definitely go number 3 star. I'd put Roman Kopylov as the number 3 star. I would put Gabriel Bonfim as the number 2 star, and the number 1 star would be Justin Gaethje because you knocked out Dustin Poirier with a head kick.
Yeah, I just want to. I missed some cut list people. Alan McDonald was going to cut Priscilla Cachoeira. The problem is she was like on a winning streak then. He also threw in Darius Flowers. 0-1 in the UFC. I would use him just to get over somebody. Not
and a short notice.
Yeah,
Notice.
And
They
short
always
notice,
give
another
them
good
back.
point. Not a good point. Did short notice. And it was a fun fight up to that point. He was throwing bombs. Like, it was a fun fight until he got kicked in the dick. Obviously Justin Gaethje and Gabriel Bonfim both are on my list, so I'll add 3 new ones. I'll go with Yoris Medish. He's 3-1 in the UFC now. He also got, anytime you get like a spinning back fist knockout, it's always fun. New division, picked up the biggest win, so kind of get a little buzz there. So Yoris Medish made my Bulls list. My number 2, Derek Lewis. Yeah, but I don't want to say saved his job, but saved his relevance to like the hardcore. But then what people got to remember, they got to remember the post-fight stuff, the dancing, all that. It wouldn't have worked for other people, but it worked for Derek Lewis. And then, like I said, Gaethje and Bonfim are on mine, so I got to find someone new. I'm going to go with Kevin Holland. 2 wins in a row in the division. Beat 2 former contenders, and Michael Chiesa and Santiago Ponzinibbio kind of set himself in one point. Wasn't that far ago? We kind of said, we know who he is. He's going to beat these guys. He's not going to beat these guys. Now he's wondering, like, hey, maybe he's on the rise. So let's go over to the Bears. These are the people who had a bad night. Again, we do it 3, 2, 1. I'll let you go first again.
People who had a bad night.
Or it could be a theme too.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely put Tony Ferguson on there. He had a bad night. He just looked like he was past his prime. Michael Chiesa, another guy that looked like maybe that's the end of his career. And of course, I'd definitely say the worst bad night would be to Vinicius Salvador, because he had a chance to maybe rectify in the fans' eyes, at least not making weight, putting out a good performance, and he decided to showboat too much.
One thing I just want to add about Chiesa. Chiesa hasn't won a fight in 2.5 years now. So that's never good. His stock has gone way down. I'll read some people's. Kiwi goes Bull. Bonfim goes Bear. Lewis. There goes one. I don't know if that was like a typo or maybe didn't like Derek Lewis's performance. Chris Wiz, Derek Lewis for Bulls, and Gaethje and Holland. So I'll add some more to your list. My number 3 for this is Bears, who had a bad night. I'm going to go with Marcos Hajiro de Lima, just simply because he finally got a big name. He was on a 2-fight winning streak. That winning streak got snapped, so his stock obviously went down. Not only did he lose, but just got ran through on the pay-per-view portion. I don't think he's been on a pay-per-view before. The pay-per-view portion of a card, so not good for him. My number 2, Jan Blachowicz. You mentioned it already. He's 40 years old. He's 1-2-1 over his last 4 fights. Even his one win was over an injured fighter who got injured. It wasn't the best. So Jan Blachowicz, his stock is way down. And my number 1 is Bellator and Ryzen. They lost tonight because they have their big combined card, and they have the brilliant idea to do it at the same time as the UFC, not only UFC, but a UFC pay-per-view. Like, come on, guys, be better than that. I know a lot of people are talking about like how great of a night it was, and I get that. But the problem is, like, you're going to have your hardcores who's going to have one on the TV, one on the laptop, something on the phone. One, those people are rare. 2, you're also dividing their attention. So, if you what, like, I think Watanabe versus what's her name there?
Vita Ortega.
Vita Ortega, exactly my point. Like, they were fighting when Gaethje and Poirier was fighting. Was there anybody watching that fight? Or like, ignore Gaethje and Poirier. Let me watch that fight. So just bad timing. I just thought it was you had one of your biggest events of the year, and all the media this week, Sherdog, all the other top sites, most of us focused on the UFC, so just really bit poor. I didn't tell you this one, so unfortunately, unless you're who you are prepared, I don't think you will be. But dude, seriously is kind of you'll get it in a second when I start giving you. I have a bunch, dude, seriously. So I'll start with Roman Karpelov. Dude was having a wonderful night, got a knockout, and then he goes, I want to take on the biggest gangster in the middleweight division and go Sean Strickland. Dude, seriously? Not to call out Sean Strickland. Everyone in the chat knows who the biggest gangster in the middleweight division is. It's Bo Nickel.
Jason, yes.
That
would actually be more feasible to happen.
Yeah. Just so you know, we have someone challenge. We talk about Bo Nickel every show. Someone challenged me once to mention Bo Nickel on every show until he loses. So every show I mention Bo Nickel's name at least once. So that's for all the people there. Second one, dude, Joe Rogan. You tell a guy, oh, you're gonna move out of the weight class. He's in the weight class. Like, dude, seriously.
Oh my god, that was horrific. Horrific. Dude, oh my.
Can we stop doing this? Here's another dude. Seriously, like anytime someone makes a bet on MMA that's not even that much money, can we not post it on the screen like DraftKings? Oh, someone bet $15,000. Like, dude, seriously. Like people bet like 150 grand on the Super Bowl. Like you make our sports seem so small when you do things like that. Like, dude, seriously. Dude, seriously. Bobby Green, that whole Triple H thing. One, it's where he takes the word and then he spits it up in the air like that. One, it's somebody else's gimmick. Second, it's gross because when he does it, like you're spitting on your opponent, the referee, Joe Rogan coming in, getting all wet from your it's just gross. Like, stop doing it. I got two more. This is for poor Kamaru Usman. Pretend I'm Kamaru Usman for a second. All right, you're there. You're celebrating your boy. He just won by high kick. You're in the cage, like, that's my boy, my training partner. I love this guy. I showed him that. And then they're just going to keep showing highlights of Leon Edwards kicking him in the head. I said, imagine I'm Kamaru Usman for a second. Like, dude, seriously?
Well, he's at least I'm on the winning side of that tonight.
Yeah. I mean, you just got to keep seeing, like, dude, bad enough you come back to Salt Lake City, but you keep showing that. Like, dude, seriously. And my last one, I'm gonna do a positive, dude, seriously. Obviously, I'm from New England. I'm not. I don't live in Boston, but I'm close enough. So Boston's. People ask what city I see Boston. I love all the Boston sports teams. UFC, the next pay-per-view is in Boston. Did the promo through, ship it up to Boston in the promo. Like, dude, seriously? Like that's a positive, dude. Seriously, like, dude, like, seriously, nice job, UFC. So there you guys have it. There's your dude, seriously. Let's see if there's. I know there's. They showed Karl Malone getting booed. I didn't see that.
He did get booed.
Why
he did get booed.
Hold on a second. Why would Karl Malone get booed in Salt Lake City? He's like the best athlete they've ever had.
I mean, there's all those kind of allegations about him now. I guess before he made it big in the NBA, and there's also a fan base there that probably never saw him play.
Doesn't he have a lot of like domestics or something like that?
Along those lines, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really follow Karl Malone's career, but okay, fine. If he has domestics convictions, then definitely boo that guy. Screw him.
But there's also like the fan base in there. I don't think they ever saw Karl Malone play. They never saw him win the MVP in 1998. They have no clue who he is, really.
Yeah, that's true. So, all right, what was your grade? So we don't do it like 1 through 10. We do it like if you're in school, like A, B, C. You can go A+, B+, whatever. What would be your grade for the card?
I would give this a solid like A+ in that range. I thought the action on this card was great. The prelims really set the tone for this card. I mean, you had a spinning back fist finish, you had the Kopylov head kick finish, and then you started the main card out with the best version of Kevin Holland we've ever seen. Derek Lewis landed a flying knee, which is insane. And then how we closed the pay-per-view off with a Justin Gaethje head kick finish over Dustin Poirier. So this is a solid A+, and really the UFC's kind of got this new market in Salt Lake City where they should keep going there every summer, either July, August. They've seemed to have a lot of luck, and I would expect them to go back at some point in 2024.
Yeah, like what a weird market. Like that not only do they go to Utah, but it's a pay-per-view town. Like that's you know what? Good thing I left this back. Like, dude, seriously? Like, come on. Like yeah, it was a really good. I don't give out A's easily so I'll go B+. The only thing, the knockout in the main event, usually I want the knockout. I wanted more of a war. I wanted a fight of the year candidate. So that's the only thing. So I'm going to go B+. But overall, like, very happy with the card. Really, really fun. All right, hardest one. I told you to pay attention to the chat. Don't let the people down. Were you paying attention? And tell us, who is your listener of the evening? The people want to know. They all compete. Who's your listener of the evening?
Ooh. I'm a big wrestling fan, and I did not like Triple H, so I liked Alan. He did make some good points as well, did some good recommendations on some of the fights, and I do agree Triple H is an old man now.
Yeah, Alan's always shown. So he's talking about Alan McDonald. He's a real OG of this one. He is as one of the top guys as they come. He's like a George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva type commenter. Like he's up there. He's a goat. So nice job there, Alan McDonald. For me, this guy came out strong, and he was great all night. But when I call somebody out and then they correct me, I got to give him a listen tonight. I apologize. I'm going to butcher his last name, but Michael Kryvans. Michael, you were my listener of the night. He's in here all the time. So I don't know if I don't think I've ever given it to him before, but Michael, you had a great night. You did a Derek Lewis flying knee to me when I called you out. So nice
Just
job.
Keep your pants on.
So there you guys have it. We went over 2 hours. We believe this is the most in-depth recap show in the entire world. Ben was not here. Ben will be here back next week. The problem, he wasn't here. So you guys know Ben is he's one of the top guys in Sherdog. He's got a lot of responsibilities. He had to recap Bellator and all this stuff. So that's why he couldn't be here. But filling in, doing his best, Euros Medish coming in on short notice, spinning back fisting people. Jason Hagholm. Jason, tell the people where they can find all your work. Tell them how to follow you guys. Listen, let's get this guy the love. Let's get him a lot of follows. So he'll come back in the future. I think he did a great job.
Well, thank you very much, Keith. Thanks for having me. Pleasure as always. Yeah, if you want to follow me out on social media, you can follow me on Twitter, or is it X now? I don't whatever it's called.
Talking to the wrong person.
On Twitter at J, the letter J, Hagholm, my last name, which is HAGHOLM, and the number 1. And you can follow me on Instagram at J Hagholm there. I'll post a lot of content and stuff more so on my Twitter and things like that. I have threads as well, but that seems like it's kind of died a little bit. But yeah, you can follow me out there. I definitely a main MMA driven channel, a Twitter account.
You do anything? You have writings anywhere else or something like that?
I have some outlets, but I haven't really been as active in that aspect this year.
Just doing the quick tweets.
Yeah, quick tweets.
I mean, we follow each other on Twitter. We're always talking throughout the week. So, especially at events, he's a really good follow. So make sure you follow him. Jason, thank you so much, guys. We'll be back. Preview show will be out tomorrow. We will, both me and Ben will be here. That's UFC Sandhagen versus Font. I have a hot take on that one. Not who wins or loses, but a hot take on how they. You know what? I'll do it right now because some people don't do the preview show. They fucked Boston by taking Font off from who, by the way, is from Boston, taking him off the card, sliding him in the main events against Corey Sandhagen. No, when the Sandhagen fight fell off, they should have moved Sandhagen to the Boston card with Font, and they could have just put Jessica Andrade versus Tatiana Suarez in the main event of this card. Anyways, so there you go. I'm going to say it again tomorrow in the preview, but we'll be back next week recapping that. Thank you so much, guys. Hit like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Follow my man, Jason. And follow me too. If you don't follow me, shame on you.